The Marinade.
There's no O in Marinade. Let's try it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The Marinade.
Marinade.
Bone Marinade. The
That's
Marinade.
The Marinade. With Jason Earle.
Just gotten free from my J.O.B. So I took myself down to the bar. Well, from 6 to 7, it's a working.
Welcome to The Marinade with Jason Earle, a free-flowing conversation about the creative process with creative people. This is episode 120, and our guest is the great singer-songwriter Hayes Carll. Over his 20-year recording career, Hayes has been nominated for a Grammy, written with the likes of Wylie, Hubbard, and Guy Clark, and earned the almost universal respect of peers, critics, and fans. We caught up with Hayes at Bok Tower Gardens in Lake Wales, Florida, where he was playing the Concert Under the Stars series. Y'all, Hayes is a dream guest, and he did not disappoint. It is my great pleasure to bring you my conversation with Hayes Carll.
When I hear a country song and why I can't stop in time, be my superpower. And who says happy only gets to last an hour? It takes more than a sign on the window to define how long we all get to drive.
Dude, this is such an honor. I'm so grateful for your time. I've been a fan. It's interesting. I interviewed Corey Brandon last night.
Oh yeah.
And I was doing research for that conversation around, and it's this whole week as well as getting ready to talk to you. And in that process, I recognized like both of y'all's debut records came out in 2002.
Huh.
So which is crazy for me, just because I've been a fan for pretty much that whole time of both of yours. And it was wild to me to think about how long that's been and how much your music has been a part of my life. Like how sort of as I'm going through adulthood, as I'm sort of like becoming a grown-ass man, how like that music was a soundtrack to that. And then it reminded me of, I had the great honor of interviewing Todd Snyder about 2 years ago. And I asked Todd, I was like, you're revered by folks in terms of songwriters. Like people look to you as someone who is special at what you do and somebody who, has done these amazing things. And I was like, do you think of yourself as kind of like as a mentor or whatever? And, he was very humble about it. And he was sort of like, no, not really. I was like, but there's got to be folks that like came along, that you feel like you sort of were a part of their careers or whatever. And your name came up, just like he wasn't trying to give any credit for your career or anything like that. But he said that he just remembered when you first got to Nashville and you were playing songs, how there was a buzz about what you were doing and how, and he kind of lit up when he was talking about it. He was excited to talk about you and your songwriting. And so I wonder if we could like start by going way, way back.
Sure.
If you remember, that time and like what it felt like arriving in Nashville and folks like a Todd Snyder or a Guy Clark paying attention to your songs.
Yeah. I do remember it. And like you, 20 years feels like a long time.
Right?
When I look back at it. But I remember very, very vividly. I remember meeting Todd. I remember the show we did. So I guess backtrack a little bit. I started out playing just little beach bars in Texas, and then got around Houston, and certain people like Wylie, Hubbard, and Sisters Morales started taking me out and let me open for them, which really just changed everything for me because I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, you know, I kind of thought it was like you're either on MTV or CMT or you weren't. I didn't know there was this whole middle ground of people that can go out and make a living and be respected artists, and even though they're not household names. And so these people started taking me out and letting me get in front of their crowds, and eventually I made a record, and I booked my first out-of-state tour 20 years ago, last month.
Wow.
It was October of 2002. 2002, thank you.
Yeah.
And I did a 2-month tour with a guy named Mondo Signs.
Yeah.
He's a singer-songwriter,
So
but he's
good.
a staff writer at Carnival Music, and great songwriter and singer. And the two of us went out, and I think on that trip, or shortly thereafter, was the first time I met Todd. I went and did some kind of New Faces night at a club called the Exit Inn, and I remember going out in the parking lot after the show, or in between the show, and Todd was out there barefoot in this, you know, dirty parking lot, and Jack Ingram they were buddies, and Jack had told him he should come check me out, and he did, much to his credit and my delight, and it was heady times for me. It was that beginning of when things are just starting to happen, and you're getting just a little taste of the thing that you've been dreaming of. And you know, I mean, I was drawing 5 people at my shows, so it's like,
Right.
there was no certainty that any of it was going to lead to a career, but I was starting to take the first steps down the road that so many of my heroes had taken, and was starting to get to meet people that, if not them directly, I met the guy who played guitar with somebody, or the tour manager for somebody, or the third ex-wife of somebody. And for me, it was all just, I was so excited just to have any proximity and connection to the people who had made this music that was so important to me.
Yeah.
And so that was really exciting times early on to meet people who had careers, like of any kind. You didn't even have to be like a big star or a big influence on me. I just, if you made a living in the music business, I was impressed and wanted to find out what was going on and how you got there, because I was trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Desperately.
The way that Todd talked about, you know, that him discovering your music and getting to know you, it was like he knew you had something special. And I wonder if you had a sense that, like, you're making these connections, you're getting to know people. Did you have a sense that maybe you had, not only that you could make a living, but like maybe you had something other people didn't, or something special about the way you write?
Well, I mean, it's that, I don't know what the term for it is, but I think it's pretty common in this line of work, and probably just in the world in general, is having that combination of an outsized ego with crippling insecurity.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, sure.
So like, I think for a lot of people to do this, to put yourself out there, to chase this thing, you have to have some part of you that says it's worth it. You know, that there is some reason to be here. And I had that part for sure. Like, there was a part of me that, well, it started with, I just wanted to be in proximity to the thing that brought me so much joy and meaning, which was music. Those people articulated my emotional state. They helped me find an identity. They were my therapists. They were my friends. And, you know, they put words to feelings that I didn't have the language or ability to put words to at that time in my life. And that's part of what's so great about music and songwriting is people can articulate what you're feeling. And so I just, as a fan, was drawn to it and thought anything I can do to be in that world with those people, with the Willie Nelsons and the Jimmy Buffetts and the Merle Haggards and Bob Dylans and Todd Snyders, and that like if I could just be around that magic in any capacity, you know, I'll sell T-shirts. I'll do whatever. It doesn't have to be about me. I just wanted to be around it. Then I was excited about that. So that kind of pushed me in towards doing music. And then I had some idea that as a kid, like I would make up songs, and my first grade teacher used to take 5 minutes at the beginning of class and let me get on a box and entertain the class. And she said I was going to be on the Tonight Show one day. She told my parents. And then, 20 years later when I was on the Tonight Show, it was really cool to come back and say, hey, you but I think I had some kind of, showman, some kind of, some ability to just make up songs and they weren't necessarily good,
sure,
but I got great joy out of it, and I seemed to have some aptitude. And so I started writing, I was looking for that feedback, and that's why it was so important. I mean, early on, I did not have any faith that I was actually any good. I just really wanted to be good.
Yeah.
And I knew the people that were good. And so I tried to model what I did after them. But it was probably a bad ripoff, a facsimile of those people, of Lyle Lovett or of Towns or of John Prine.
You mean like some of your like your Flowers and Liquor, that the stuff that's on that was a ripoff, you think? Or like earlier songs, you mean?
I mean,
because I'm gonna challenge you on that if that's
I think a lot of it. I mean, even to this day, I just got out of the studio. I spent all week with the band in the studio, just kind of working up ideas. And almost everything I have, it's rare when I pull something and I go, okay, I can't locate where I got this idea from.
Yeah.
It's most stuff. It's like, okay, I'm doing. This is Nashville Skyline Dylan, or this is Subterranean Homesick Dylan, or whatever, or this is Wylie Redheaded Stranger. It's like it's pretty easy for me to locate those things because I have my limitations and I have my influences, and so I leaned on them. It just took a long time when I was starting out, just doing cover songs, to like find my own voice. Yeah. Everything I was like, well, do I sing like Lyle? Do I sing like Towns? Do I sing like whatever? Right. And so anyway, as I started to meet people in the business and they who did this for a living, and they would throw me a compliment or let me open for them. It was just such a huge thing because I was so insecure about, am I any good? Am I just a hack?
Sure.
And when people that I respected said, all right, kid, you got something, it was Wylie Hubbard or Guy Clark or Todd or whoever, just to say, it didn't have to be even like a full compliment. It was just, if they just didn't run me off.
I don't think Guy gave full compliments, did he?
No, probably not. Probably not.
I don't think anybody got that.
But we finished a song, and after throwing out 10 lines that he didn't like, speaking of Guy, I finally threw out a line. He said, all right, kid, I can work with that. And I was like, okay. I'm going to take that as a victory, that I have one line that Guy Clark decided is worthy of his time.
Do you remember the line?
Yeah. It was, I've got no rings upon my fingers, no ink upon my skin. It originally was ink upon my skin. I'll be as clean going out as I was coming in. And he said, you should change it to beneath. I got no rings upon my fingers, no ink beneath my skin. That's the tattoo. It's under the. Yeah. And
shit.
And then that was the start of the song. So.
Yeah.
But I remember getting really stressed because I was throwing out. I'd never co-written before. He was like one of my first co-writes was with Guy Clark. And
what an education.
Yeah, and I was high. He got me really stoned, and I'm like, I love weed, but I don't handle it particularly well,
Yeah.
And so I was freaking out a little bit, and I kept throwing out ideas. He was like, "What else you got?" I was like,
was it just the two of you?
Yeah.
Holy shit! Was this like in his famous?
His basement.
Yeah.
Workshop.
Yeah. Dude, that's amazing. Okay, so that's a hell of an endorsement, but still it sounds like you were kind of wrestling with an imposter syndrome.
Yeah, totally.
Was there a moment that you kind of, once you got enough of that feedback, that you kind of went, all right, I am good at this?
I think it's still the same thing.
Okay.
I mean, just I'm way more comfortable after 20 years.
Sure.
And a certain level of, I've made 8 records and like I don't feel like an imposter, but I also don't. I I don't know. It's hard to see yourself
Yeah.
for what you are, how other people see you, you know? So I just, every once in a while, it's someone will come and tell me, and lately it's been happening where like young guys come up to me and tell me that I influenced them, which is really funny and surreal because it feels like yesterday I was the guy going up to Todd Snyder and saying, dude, you're incredible. And you like influenced everything I did. And now to have people come up and say that to me, I'm like, huh. Like, when did that happen? Because I've just been trying to rhyme some shit for a while.
Yeah.
And like somehow along the way, like I guess it, some people heard it and it meant something to some of them. So anyway, I think I still, like, I feel like I've made my living at this for 20 years. So I know that I'm not terrible.
Right.
And I think every once in a while I get excited about something that I do and think, okay, that's worthy. And that's, I'm proud that that's out in the world. I'm not as insecure as I was about it when I was young.
That's so interesting, and I think maybe that, I wonder if that helps kind of keep you hungry too, right? The fact that like it's sort of one of those, I mean, art in general, but songwriting, I would say, you're just not going to master it, right? So like you can get really, really good, but I mean, John Prine may have made his best record. His last record may have been his best record.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, it's up there among the best that he made.
Yeah, and his first record might have been his best record.
Right,
too. Yeah.
right.
That's John Prine. Though.
Right, yeah, no, yeah. And again, I'm not trying to. Never try to compare my guests to Prine, but the point being that you're constantly getting better at the craft. You're constantly getting better at the work, and I think your most recent record is your best. And I've just devoured your whole catalog again, for the umpteenth time, and I think it's your best so far.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. You're welcome, and I'm grateful for it, man. I probably have listened to it more than just about any other record last year, save maybe Allison Russell's Outside Child. But
yeah,
other than that, you came in second.
I was just listening to her right before our conversation started, and I have this feeling. This maybe sound weird, but every once in a while I'll see an act, a performer, an artist, and I'll think, I wish there was that was a stock that you could invest in, because it's going to be a success.
Yeah.
So I mean, the only way I do that is I just become a fan and try and support them. But Allison was like that. Shovels and Rope was like that for me. Like, you just see somebody and you go, they are so good that there's just no way that that's not going to be a thing that people are going to appreciate on some level. And I'd known Allison just a little bit at the Birds of Chicago, but I went and saw her perform before Outside Child came out, but she was doing all those songs off of it, and I thought, this is a whole different deal, and it was incredible. So it's been fun to watch the ride.
I've never gotten to see her live. I did get to interview her last year. I got to interview her while she learned of her Grammy nominations.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it happened.
I saw that.
Yeah, that was me.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was incredible. And we had to postpone 3 times. It just like fate intervened, and I got to interview her in that moment. It was so magical.
That's very cool.
Yeah, but she's playing that Orange Blossom Review that you played last year here in Lake Wales.
Oh, yeah.
That's what you played?
Yeah.
Which was a great set, by the way. That was my first time seeing you live. And I was just struck by how great your band was, how great you are on stage, like how tight the whole set was. It was awesome.
Well, thank you.
I'm curious, kind of going back to your first co-write is Guy Clark, which is kind of comical even, like, to think about how incredible that is. But you've co-writing is a thing for you. Your whole latest record is with other people, and I've heard this through line in our conversation so far that feels like relationships are something that are incredibly important to you, at least as it applies to creativity. And I wonder if we could kind of like walk through the record just briefly.
Sure.
And talk about a few of the folks that you co-wrote with, and sort of like what it was like to work with those folks.
Okay.
So like kind of relatively new to me. I mean, maybe the most powerful song on a record full of powerful songs, Help Me Remember.
Mm-hmm.
Relatively new to me is Josh Morningstar. Maybe the last year and a half I've been aware of who Josh was and what an incredible writer Josh is. what does that process look like with the two of you when you're sitting down to write?
Yeah, I didn't know Josh before we got together. I was co-writing come out a bunch of different ways. Sometimes, they're friends or friends of friends or just people, artists you like or respect, or sometimes you just get put together by a publisher or, third party. So I was aware of some of his songs, but I didn't know him personally. And so he came over to the house. He brought me a book, which I thought was really cool, to bring a gift to a co-write. And it was a book written by Harold Eggers, I think his name was. He was Towns' tour manager.
Oh.
And so he knew I had an affinity for Towns, and it was this kind of rare book. And so it was fun. And so I appreciated that. And we sat down and just talked and caught up a bit. And I just remember I had this idea for Help Me Remember. And originally there were two options that we could take that I had in mind. One was, I just really like that phrase, help me remember. And one option was, it's going to be like a couple going through some hard times. Mm-hmm. And one of them asking the other one, remind me why we're here. Like, why should we fight for this marriage or, with this relationship? I thought that could be an interesting song. But the other option, and the one that we ended up taking, was somebody sort of losing the thread to their own story and struggling with dementia or Alzheimer's, like my grandfather did before he passed. And that felt like a really powerful topic to explore, the idea of having witnesses to your life who can remind you of your what you stood for and what you're about, and so we just dug in there, and everything is different. Every co-write is different. In this case, we had no lines, we had no melody, we had nothing, just a title and an idea of what it would be about. And so I think one of us just started finger picking. I think I went to drop D and just started doing this rolling finger picking thing, and he had a version he was doing. And just started spitballing lines. Sometimes it would be very weird for people to watch who don't write songs, but it's just da ba da ba da ba da 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 da, and you're like, okay, here's a melody, and then next time da da ba da ba da ba da, ding dong dong, and there's maybe a rhyme shows up or a word shows up or an image, and you just totally stream of conscious throwing stuff out. And somebody will go, that was good. What was that? Was it tree? Okay. Oak tree. All right. Is it an ancient oak tree? And then you just like, okay, there's a thing. And what is he doing? He's looking at it. And what's happening? The leaves are falling and they're the same color as the fire that's burning. Okay, we've set a place. That's a great opening thing. And so we just go from there. And he just stayed at the house most of the day, and we got a good chunk of it done. And I think we did a Zoom co-write. We started it pre-pandemic, and then during the pandemic we did a Zoom co-write. And I think he came over a third time. It took a long time to finish that song, and it was one of most of my life I've spent very little time rewriting and editing. It's just not a thing I did, and to go back to Guy Clark, it was very much a thing that he did, and I just didn't have the patience or really understand the need. I was, I don't think I trusted my own craft, and for good reason, because I didn't really have much of one at that point. When I first started out, it was just instinct or inspiration or whatever. I didn't sit down and pound out hammer down on a song and just work it and work it and work it and work it until it was as perfect as I could make it. It was just like, it rhymed, sounds kind of cool. Okay, let's go. Release it. And so, and Guy was different. He would really, the details mattered to him a great deal. And I remember, I'm sort of embarrassed to tell this, but maybe it'll be informative to somebody, songwriter out there. But in that co-write with Guy, I finished that song and I sent it to him. I finished it after we left at a separate time, and I sent it to him, my version of it. And he called me and he said, you need to change this to that and this to that and tweak this, and like these really minute details. And I remember thinking, it doesn't matter. And this is what's embarrassing is the ego to like Guy Clark has not only let me into his house to write a song with him, but he's now giving me feedback on how to make it better and what he would like to see done. And I'm like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
And I didn't make those changes, and I was wrong. They were the right changes. I just, at the time, I didn't see it. I didn't understand why it was important. And so for some reason during the pandemic, I started caring more about those details. And with that song, I was like, this is potentially really powerful. This could be really good. And I don't want to sell it short. I don't want to have regrets about it and go, a year later or 10 years later, man, I wish I'd tried harder or worked harder on that song because I left something on the table. So I didn't. I worked it, and I worked it like hundreds of times, and it took me months. And just, tiny trivial things. But by the end, I thought, okay, I can let this go. I've done everything I can possibly do, and it has achieved, from my point of view, what I wanted to achieve, and so I can let it out into the world.
That's incredible. I'm so glad you shared that. What a great lesson. Because I think also, I hear what you're saying about, hey, this is Guy Clark making these suggestions, and looking back on it, who were you to say that they weren't right? But at the same time, even though we have heroes like Guy, or we might have mentors that we look up to, they're not always right.
No.
And so that pushback is healthy, and sometimes you got to trust what is right. It sounds like at the time you were just sort of like, well, I'm not gonna get into this at the moment, but
yeah, it just I think it was, I just didn't see the importance of it. Mm-hmm. And which again, I cringed when I hear myself say that, but
right.
It's just where I was at that point in my life. And I was very much of the Kerouac school of, the stream of conscious, do some drugs and just let the inspiration fall out. And I looked at Dylan as a big example of that, thinking that that's what he did, not realizing that he's still rewriting records he made 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And going back and doing it. And I just, a lot of my early heroes just had that thing where in my mind it just came out, and you just grabbed it, captured lightning in a bottle, and that was it. And your whole job was just to walk around and be ready to get the lightning and the inspiration. And what I didn't realize is that's just a small part of it. It's an important part, being inspired, but your craft and your ability to take that inspiration and turn it into something is what really separates, I think, the amateur from the professional. And for years, and still to this day, I have thousands of ideas, and in my mind, I'm like, that's a hit. That's an amazing song.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to go right now. I'm going to pick up my guitar, smoke this joint, sit down, I'm going to record myself, making something up. And in my head, I can visualize where it's going to go, what it's going to be like, what the arrangement's going to be, the effect it's going to have on people. I'm accepting my award at the Grammys,
Yeah.
But it's really easy to get swept away in that for me, and just think, okay, well, because I have this little bit of inspiration, I have the whole thing. Well, I don't. I have me mumbling a bunch of stuff over a 3-chord progression.
Yeah.
It's just, I have to turn that thing. I have to sit down and do the work to turn that thing into something. And I have just accepted that as I get older, that's part of the job and part of what being an artist is, and having some connection to your work and not just relying on drugs or some experience that you have that's heightened to get a good song, because you don't need that, and I don't need to be drunk to write, and I don't need to be high to write. I can after all these years of working at it, I actually have some tools I can use, and so I try to remember that and go back. If something's not where I want it the first time, it doesn't mean give up on it. It means sit down and work harder at it, and maybe something will turn up.
Man, that's so great. Yeah, I can't think of a single creative thing that I do better drunk. I don't think it's definitely not a performance enhancer when it comes to basically anything.
Yeah,
especially writing.
Well, in my mind, it was because I always thought, just inhibitions. Just like it helps me socially, or I thought it helped me socially. overcome that fear as a writer, it would make me, at 2 a.m, I would have taking a leak in the bathroom. I would have some brilliant idea in my mind.
Yeah.
It seemed that way anyway, because I'm that whatever is in my prefrontal cortex that keeps me from, it felt like it was blocking ideas is now demolished, and all these things are coming out. And I think, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And maybe some of it was, but again, you got to actually turn it into something. And then being drunk is really not helpful when you're actually trying to work.
Right. So what is the sort of this renewed focus on editing and being more deliberate? What does that look like in practice? It's obviously got to increase the amount of time you're spending writing, I would think. Or is it?
Yeah, it when I sit down to write, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass, really, because now I can't let stuff go like I used to. It was a lot easier when I could just put it out there, and now it just gnaws at me. I'm like, God damn it, I got to go back and do this thing, and I know it's gonna take all week, and I'm just gonna do it over and over and over again. I'm gonna be so frustrated. I'm gonna lose my voice, blah blah blah. But that's just what and there's days where I write a song in an hour, and it's like, that's just what it is. I don't need to do anything here. But those are rare, and most times I just gotta put the time in. But it's never a worse song for having done it. It doesn't mean I use 98% of what I've come up with, but I've gone through the exercise and exhausted the possibilities and tried some different things and just gotten better at the craft just by doing that.
Yeah.
So even if that song isn't remarkably better, I have a little more skill built up through the experience.
There's a line in I don't want to spend too much time trying to chase it down, but the lyric goes, it says, the Strohs will win the season.
Yeah, if it was up to me.
If it was up to me, yeah. Right. The Strohs will win the season. And like the first couple times I heard that, I was like, why the fuck isn't he saying series? And then, of course, the next, it rhymes it with reason.
Uh-huh.
When you wrote that, did it come out that way, or is that an editing thing?
Oh, I don't know. That was probably my first instinct was, in that song, I remember just thinking like, okay, what are things that I would make if I was all powerful?
Yeah.
How would I make things? Okay, well, I'd be rich. I'd be friends with all of my heroes.
Yeah.
And the Strohs would win the season, or name your team.
Sure,
I'm a Houston guy and diehard Strohs fan. So, and I figure, I would do something too where it was like, whatever it is, anybody can insert it. In my mind. This is after the fact. I wasn't thinking about it when I wrote it, but after the fact, I was like, everybody can play this song and insert their own team in that spot right there in any sport. It's a season, whatever.
The Reds will win the season. Yeah, okay, it works.
Yeah. So I was just like, I'm just going to sit back and...
The Jags will win the season is too much of a stretch to be believable.
Yeah. Everything but the Jags. So that just came out. It's like sometimes, those associations come in your head and you think, okay, Strohs, season, reason, and those internal rhymes. And what I was saying about, like, do I have aptitude at this? It's in things like that probably is some of the rhyming stuff. And so that's probably my strongest skill as a writer is I can come up with lots of rhymes and then I'm trying to attach it to some emotion or tell some story with them.
Right. I want to be respectful of your time. We only got a few minutes left. What we
so you know, I'm we can stretch it out a bit.
Okay.
I need to.
Brandy Clark. What's it like writing with Brandy Clark?
Well, that was really cool for me to get to write with Brandy. I'd been a fan with hers. I first got hip to her. We were nominated for a Grammy in the same category the same year, and so I had to go check out the competition.
Yeah.
It's for best country song or country song of the year, whatever it is. And so I went and listened to her song, and it was called "Hold My Hand." I think now would be a real good time to hold my hand. And I remember seeing her performance of it on the Grammys with Dwight Yoakam.
Oh wow!
I thought, damn, that is a powerful song and a powerful performance.
Yeah.
And so I listened to her record, and I just loved the whole thing. I was really excited about getting to write with her, and I had this idea. I'd had this idea for this song in the meantime. 2 words, meantime. The play on words I thought was real clever in this sort of country tradition of, on the other hand, or something like that. And I didn't realize till after that Chris Knight has a song with the exact same title, In the Meantime.
Huh.
But I like this idea of a marriage that everything is great most of the time, but in the meantime, it just all goes to shit and falls apart, and having this juxtaposition between, that I think most people have, or a lot of people have, of, there's really good, but there's also some really hard times in between. It's just very few are just fairy tale across the board 24/7. And so this was another one that it took a couple times. I really liked the idea so much that I didn't want to settle. And so I saved it for getting to write with a great writer like Brandy. And I don't remember a whole lot about it. The first time we met in a studio somewhere in Nashville and worked on it, and we got like a chorus together. And then the second time she came over to my house, and I think we knocked out a couple verses and then just spent some more time with it, and then I went in the studio and changed a few things, and then asked her if she would come sing it with me as a duet, and she did, which I was very grateful for. So but yeah, I don't really know what to say other than she's amazing, and we spent a fair bit of time working on it and trying to craft it, and ultimately got it exactly where I wanted it to be.
Yeah. Okay. Nice Things is another one that really stands out to me on the record. It's just fun, but also a lot to handle. It's like you have to stare down all of the shit, but it's in a fun way, I guess. And writing that with the brothers Osborne.
Yeah.
What's it like writing with those guys? What was that process like?
Man, they're another band that I'm just a big fan of, and we had gotten together and written over at their house a previous song that ended up on their record called Back on the Bottle.
Uh-huh.
And so we went over the second time, and I had this idea of Nice Things, but I thought it was going to be just like a wife telling her husband, that kind of, that's why he can't have nice things, and he's screwing stuff up. And John and TJ both have like John's just an amazing guitarist, and so he's always throwing out musical ideas, and they both do. They're both great lyricists and musicians. I think it was John who said they like that idea, but let's make it bigger. Let's zoom out and make it about the world. Like what things can we talk about? And then we thought, well, and who could talk about them? Like, who has the authority? I can't come down and tell the world how to live, or what they're doing wrong. Who could? Well, God could.
Yeah.
And so God became our main character, and then we just went through some of the issues that we thought might be that God might take issue with. Were God in human form?
Yeah.
And so pollution, the illegality of drugs that grow naturally on the planet, and just the overall divisiveness and judgment of so many became the topics, and so we wrote most of that together in one sitting, and then I took it and did a lot of work on it. Made God a female. I thought that was more appropriate, and
it makes it makes so much sense. It would. I think it would feel like it would just feel different if God wasn't female. Like it needed to be the case.
It's funny to me because we made a little video for it, and I was looking at it one day, and somebody left a comment that said they went through and changed all the pronouns, the she's to he, and then they said, there, fixed it for you. And like a lot of people are upset that I've made God a woman. It's so strange to me. I'm like, we live in a galaxy, which is one of millions with billions of stars that are mostly bigger than our own sun, with trillions of planets. And for billions of years, before there was even any human life at all, and a scope and size that's unimaginable. We literally can't fathom how big this is. And somebody's going to get upset because the creator of all of that, who was not even, wasn't even written language, anyway, blah, blah, blah. That I've labeled them as a woman rather than a man. Anyway, it's just funny to me what people get hung up on sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I love that song turns the lens back on that person. Like, that person who made that video is got some shit they need to deal with, right? So you made them think about it at least, right?
Well, I don't know if I made them think about anything. I think that's the problem these days. We just get triggered and then react on the offensive rather than actually think about it, question our own belief systems, so that can be the frustrating part about society these days. Is we're all just trying to win and make our point and not listen to anybody else. So, myself probably included. But anyway, I'm not sure if that particular commenter got anything revelatory out of my song or their reaction to it.
I like to think that right now they're going like, yeah, maybe God should have been a she in that
It may
song.
be. You might be right.
Yeah.
That's an optimistic way to look at internet trolls.
Yeah.
They're all at home self-reflecting on their actions and questioning their judgment.
That fella he felt moved to comment because he was going through this moment of self-reflection. And I hope he's listening to this later in the future when this is released. And I hope he's going, you guys are right. God needed to be a woman in that. That moment probably won't make the list of the question I'm about to ask you, which is like, when you look back on 20 years of records and doing this for so long and making so many amazing albums and having these periods in your career, if we were making the documentary of your career, what are like 2 or 3 kind of scenes that have to be included in that documentary?
On the the recording part, making my first record, I did it in Pedernales, Willie Nelson's studio. Mm-hmm. So just to be in the place where Willie made his records, making my first record,
it's incredible.
It felt like it was very, very special.
It had to be validating.
Yeah, it was. I mean, and even though I knew it had nothing to do with my talent, I just paid for the studio. But still, it made me feel like I was on the right track. Like I'm again in proximity to people who have done this thing, and so that's what I was chasing. So it was a big deal for me. My second record, my wife sang with me on it. She wasn't my wife for another 13 years, but it was still cool for me. And now to look back and have on tape the moment, the very first time we sang together, and having no idea for either one of us what was to come in the future, it's just really cool to me.
That is really cool.
It's really neat. And then I did a record called K-Mag Yo-Yo, and I had I had Cora Blund and Todd Snyder come and sing on a song, and I think of that moment just because they're 2 writers I really respect, and they're both friends. But it was another one of those things that felt like, if these people like me enough and respect me enough to come and sing on my record, again, it was validation, in a way, and it made me feel proud to for that to be something that would happen, that they would do.
It struck me, that record, when I was going back through your catalog, it struck me that record is like 11 years old now, something like that.
Yeah, probably.
It doesn't feel like it came out that long ago, and it feels it still feels so fresh, as does a lot of your stuff. Your stuff is pretty timeless, but yeah, it kind of struck me that it was 11 years ago.
Yeah, it flies. It really does. Because there's a part of me where I can remember it very clearly, and it doesn't seem like long ago. And then there's part of me it feels like a long time ago. It feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah,
that was a very different place then too, in every way. And that also was a challenging time. I lost my voice right after Trouble in Mind came out, the previous record, and it was really bad. Like, I couldn't sing. It was embarrassing. I shouldn't have been on the road. I just, but it's the only way I had to make a living. So I was going out, and so right at the peak of my, of people, knowing who I was, my talent was at its lowest. And,
interesting.
And so it created a really weird thing, because all of a sudden my crowds were 2, 3, 4 times bigger than they had been, and my talent level was half of what it had been, or worse. It was embarrassing to sing. So then when I went into the studio, that whole record, I was trying to write songs that I could sing.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of spoken word. It's a lot of staying in a certain range, and just trying to get through it and not sound terrible.
So interesting.
And I'm fortunately able to get out of that, but it took a long time.
How did you emotionally, like, how were you processing that? Do you remember? 'Cause that's heavy, man.
Yeah, I had a hard time. I mean, I was also dealing with some massive anxiety issues.
Yeah.
I started having panic attacks a year or two before, or maybe 3 or 4 years before, but they lasted for a long time, and that was just so crippling. It wasn't a thing I had known, and then in my early 30s, I had one, and once you have it, then you know it can happen.
Yep.
And so now it's ever present. And I got to the point where, you're up on stage. It's hard enough to be on stage, and I've drank heavily to feel okay and not silly up there in front of those people. And then you throw in anxiety and the fear that, your hands are going to freeze up and you're going to not be able to breathe, and it just was a lot every night to carry. And then I sound like shit. I'm singing awfully. And I remember, I've never been a person who understood suicide. It made no sense to me. I was like, how does somebody get to a point where they would end their life? And I remember there was a moment, and it really scared me and jolted me into doing something about it. But I was at a hotel room in Seattle, and I just need to go to the vending machine to get a Coke or a snack or something. And I was scared to leave my room, because it was I just got to a point where I couldn't function.
Yeah.
Which was not who I was. I used to be, if you dropped me off in China, I'd find my way home and have a good time doing it.
Yep.
And now I can't even leave my hotel room because I'm afraid I'll freak out and die.
Mm-hmm.
And it just hit me. I was like, this is exhausting. And emotionally, I don't know how to do this every day. I don't know how long I could do this. And it was the first time and only time really in my life where I thought, that there might be an easier way. And I say that just to, not because I'm in any danger, but because at that moment I was, and I have lots of people come talk to me about that. Or there's a lot of people don't even know that I struggled with it, and they just talk about it, and then some people do know that I struggled with it, and they come and talk to me about it. And it feels like I wish I had somebody at that time to talk to. I didn't know I was ashamed of it. I was embarrassed about it. I didn't want anybody to know that felt like I was losing my mind. So I just kept it in. So I there are things you can do, and I just encourage anybody who has issues like that to look into it, whether it's therapy or medication or meditation or the health choices you make or whatever. There's a lot of positive things you can do to rewire your brain and get to a better place, because it's a really dark place to be when you're just afraid to be.
Yeah. 2012 was the first panic attack that I acknowledged was a panic attack.
Really?
And I thought I was having a heart attack. I was out in public.
Yeah.
Ambulance came. They took my vitals and they're like, your vitals are perfect. Like, you're totally fine.
Yeah.
you know, but it didn't feel like that to me. I couldn't feel my hands.
Yeah.
I had tunnel vision.
Yeah.
I couldn't breathe, tightness in my chest. And like you say, once you have it, you know you can again. But the other thing that's nice about your first panic attack is that you recognize the symptoms then, right? So like I can feel one coming on now.
Yeah.
Usually I can stave it off. The last time I had a serious one was about 3 weeks ago, and it was the first one I'd had in years that was like, oh shit, okay, I got to remind myself that I'm not dying, I'm not having a heart attack. This is my anxiety reaching its boiling point, you know?
Yeah. My son heartbreakingly dealt with it as a teenager.
Yeah.
He went to a hospital in an ambulance, and same thing. And he told me that he's glad he got it out of the way young. It breaks my heart to hear that, but like,
wow.
But, you know, he learned the psychology, learned what's going on physically, learned what's going on mentally, learns where the adrenaline's going and how your body's responding and why. And he's coached himself up. And I've watched him have panic attacks. And he'll be stiff as a board, stretched out. And he'll be like, it's okay, Dad. It's okay. It's going to pass.
Wow.
And I'm freaking out.
Wow.
He's white. And I'm like,
yeah.
But he has learned. And now he doesn't, they're not a regular part of his life anymore. So it's just really interesting what the mind can do, and for me, just to bring it home, what I did is I went and I got a medication that basically messes with your focus and your memory, and so you can't focus long enough to think about a panic attack and let it build. Like you start thinking, you know, you have the feeling like, oh, there's a twinge of something, I feel weird. And then that can build, and it's really hard to shake it.
Yeah.
But with this medicine, you go, oh, I have a twinge of something. Oh, look at the bird, and you can't hold a thought for long enough to have.
Like you take it when you feel it coming on, or you take it regularly?
No, you would take it daily.
Yeah.
And I took it for a month, and I forgot to get the prescription refilled because I can't remember shit. But at the end of the month, I go, I just had a month without a single panic attack.
That's awesome.
And okay, it's not physical. It's all in my mind.
Yeah.
There's not something that I do. It's in my mind. And so from that moment on, I just had this understanding that it was up here. So if I could take care of up here in the various ways, I was going to be a lot better off and was not in as much danger as I had been.
Yeah. Man, I'm so glad that you got to that place and found that help. This has been such a pleasure, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
We always end on the art that has you inspired at the moment. So it could be a book you're reading, or music you've been listening to, or a TV show you're fired up about. It doesn't have to be, highfalutin or anything. It could be like that you rediscovered the Spice Girls or whatever. I mean, whatever's got you fired up.
Yeah. Well, I'm reading a book called. I have the worst recall. So when people ask me, like, what do you listen to? What's your favorite restaurant? Whatever. Like, I can't remember almost any of it. I'm reading A Gentleman in Moscow, I believe.
Oh, I love that book. Immortals?
Yeah.
I fucking love that book. I wrote a song about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Not a
really
good song,
enjoying it.
but
It makes me laugh.
I wrote a song called Count Rostov about it.
Oh, that's incredible.
Love that book.
Yeah. So I'm enjoying that right now. And I just got off the road with a guy named Brent Cobb.
Yeah.
And I really, really like his style and songwriting. He's very soulful. And then he just produced a record on a guy named Adam Hood, who I really like the record that they did together.
Good. That record's so good.
It's great. They got Blackberry Smoke as the band, and then Adam stuff, and then Brent producing, and it's tight and groovy and just to the point in a great way. And he sings his ass off on it. So
yeah,
I'm digging that right now, and I'm kind of. That's it. I've been working on a lot of my own stuff lately, and sometimes I will just put other people's music away while I do my own thing. But I guess that's my latest creative projects that I've been digging by other people.
Those are great ones, man. Yeah, I definitely co-sign both of those. Yeah, Gentleman Moscow hit me in a way, and I don't know if I can totally put my finger on what I loved about it so much, but it's just so beautifully written and so like whimsical and like
I laugh regularly at
Yeah.
the language and the attitude of this main character.
Yeah.
And I also just love authors that are so erudite and know it's like they're polymaths almost. Like they know so much about so many things.
Yeah.
Milan Kundera was always one of those for me, and that just they're just endlessly entertaining because they can take the chopping of a vegetable or the overthrow of a government and make them equally interesting and exciting.
Yes.
And
yes.
that's a remarkable gift.
Yes.
So.
Well, I feel like you have a very similar gift, and I'm really, really grateful for the music that you make and for this time you've given me, man. This has been, I expected that it would be a delight. This has been more than I could have possibly asked. Thank you so
cool.
much.
Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoy your podcast. I listened to a couple of them.
Oh, cool.
And
very cool. Thank you.
So it's good to talk to you. Enjoy it.
Awesome.
Does the first kiss mean it's true? And why don't we all just ask ourselves, what would Willie do? And why can't stop in time be my superpower? And who says happy only gets to last an hour? Let's get high then, Spider-Man swinging on the Eiffel Tower. Says happy only gets to last an hour. Who says happy only gets to last an hour?
Hayes Carll, y'all. Thank you so much, Hayes. Thank all of you for listening. HayesCarll.com for all things Hayes Carll. The song you're hearing in this episode is Happy Hour, which I got to hear him play at the Concert Under the Stars series in Lake Wales, Florida at Bok Tower Gardens. You may have heard it on the Smash television series Yellowstone. I want to take a second just to thank the folks behind the scenes. Hayes' management team was awesome, y'all. And this has just been the experience for me over the years, almost universally. I have dealt with good folks behind the scenes, publicists and managers, the people who do a lot of work to make press happen, to make travel happen, and I'm just really thankful for his team. Everybody was a pro. Everybody was really nice, and I'm just so thankful for this opportunity. This was a dream guest. Hayes was someone I had on my short list when we first conceptualized the Marinade, and to get to sit down with him face to face and then see him play for the second time in a year was just such a thrill. MarinadePodcast.com for all things The Marinade, including written pieces, photography, our online store, and more. Our year-end recap will be coming up there very soon. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, y'all. Subscribe and give a 5-star rating on your podcast app. Tell a friend about the show. These are all free ways to support The Marinade. We're thankful for any little bit. Y'all, we have conversations with Colin Halliburton of the Rose Line, Langhorne Slim, who I recorded with at the Orange Blossom Review Festival, and I'll be speaking about quite a bit more coming up. Y'all, I'm just so grateful for y'all supporting this Marinade thing. If you really like what we're doing, please consider joining our Patreon community, where for just a few bucks a month, as little as $2 a month, you can gain access to Patreon exclusive content like our show Jason's Journey, where I talk about the moments that shape my creative life and provide a window into the process of making the Marinade. I just started a new series that I'm, at least right now, calling Inner Child. Just the other day, I posted a really fun conversation with Colin Halliburton where I asked him some silly questions like his favorite color, his favorite food, stuff like that. We tend to get a little bit in the weeds about anxiety and depression and existence and all this stuff on the Marinade, but I like to get silly too. And I was just thinking about the old Sports Illustrated for kids and how like a kid would interview, an athlete and ask him just kind of stuff kids want to know, what's your favorite video game, that kind of stuff. So we're going to try to do that with artists going forward. Colin and I had a really fun time, and for as little as $2 a month, you can access that. I also post what I'm getting down on, which is the examination of the art that is inspiring me at the moment over on Patreon. we sometimes get together for Patreon happy hours, which we're overdue for. Patreon.com/Marinade Podcast if you are interested. If you want to support the show financially, but you don't want to commit to a monthly subscription, you can Venmo or PayPal us at The Marinade. All the money goes right back into making the show. I'm saving up to cover some really cool stuff coming up. Jen Ross and I just covered the Orange Blossom Review Festival in Lake Wales, and we just made a lot of great connections. And Jen was doing incredible work. Jen Ross Photography. Follow her on all the socials if you aren't. JenRossPhotography.com as well. She's always been great. She's taken it to a different level, y'all. And the photos that she took at Orange Blossom Review, Margot Price and Allison Russell, all these folks were like understandably fawning over this wonderful work that Jen was doing. So make sure that you're following Jen on the socials if you aren't already. And then also we'll have some things, both her photography and some thoughts I have about that experience going up on marinadepodcast.com. And, we're just kind of trying to position ourselves where we can cover more of these things because we have so much fun and I feel like we do really good work. And I just want to bring those experiences to y'all as much as possible. Y'all, thank you again. Hayes Carll, everybody. Are you kidding me? Until next time. Go out and create something. Cheers, y'all.